In this demonstration, we're going to go over some of the basic text features in Adobe Animate. I do have a few things that I placed on screen here, actually using my text tool, of course. There's two basic kinds of text that we generate with respect to clicking on the stage and establishing where the text goes and so on. One's known as point text and one's known as area text. Basically, point text means you go to the text tool and you click. So make sure you are on a particular frame, and then you just click and start typing away. Hello, my name is, okay. And that's known as point text. Now the way that works is it will continue to type on a line until you hit your return key. You see how that pushes out. You have to hit your return key. So that's known as point text. Now I'm going to delete that. I'm going to go over to my selection tool and just select that and hit my delete key. And we'll try this again. This time I'm going to create area text. So the difference is when you initiate the text with the text tool, you actually click and drag. And you see how it makes a dotted line? What you're establishing is a fixed width for the text box. And it will accommodate the height by how much text you have. So again, if I go hello, my name is, you're going to see Daniel Ouellette. And you can see here that as I type, it just holds that width, but it will accommodate on the height of the text box. Now I can go in actually with, I can go in while I'm on my text tool and adjust that width if I like. And I can do it from any corner. And I can also do it after the fact. Let's say I've already created it and I've done some other work. I can go to my selection tool. And with the text highlighted, you can always grab a corner and modify that. So once you've done that, you've established a new width and it will stay fixed. And again, I can move that around. Now, a nice thing is when you do point text, let me just show you that. I'll go back to my text tool, click. Actually, oh, that's an important thing too, actually. If you're on your text tool and you're going over existing text, when you click, you're actually engaging that live text box. So if you're going to create new text, you'll have to go somewhere away from the text. And you can tell by the cursor. You see how the cursor turns into that, what we call an I-beam. That means you're about to edit a current existing text box. So if I want to initiate new text, I have to go to the crosshair like that, then click. Like that. And if I start typing, blah, 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 it again stays on one line. What I was getting at here is even though it's just point text, once I go in and engage the width, it converts it to what we call area text, and it will hold that fixed width at this point, after this point. You see how that's going there, okay? So it remains, oh, I see what's going on here. It's white text. That makes it hard to read, doesn't it? I'm going to select all and just change that color to green. There we go. Now I can see it. And so on. Okay, I'm just going to actually delete that. So once again, text tool. Oh, and of course, now if you want to get out of there, I believe I can hit escape. Yes. And that sort of starts it all over again. So make sure you have the crosshair to initiate a new text box. And again, I'm just going to put in some random letters here with some spaces and demonstrate that once I go and adjust the width, it does convert it to the area text box, and it will no longer just type on a line. It will hold that width. Okay, so those are the basics on generating the text with the text tool. Let me talk about the text types now. So I'm going to delete most of these guys. In fact, I'll delete them all. Okay, except for this box. This is the description of the three text types. So let me show you what I mean by that. One is called static, one is called dynamic, one is called input. And we established that in the properties panel. And I can change them at any point, but let me initiate some new text. I'll just say static. And by default, it should be going to static. And you'll see that in your text properties right here. And you have the list static, dynamic, or input. And if I want to change that to dynamic, I simply choose it. Now if I click away and deselect, you can tell it's a dynamic text box because it has the dotted line around it. Okay, so let me create a second text box over here. Actually, I'll see this one's dynamic. Let me just make that a little bit more readable with the red. Okay, so dynamic, and it's dynamic text up here, and I click away, and you can see that. So let me just change this one technically to static. And if I click away, you do not see that bounding box, that dotted line. So this is dynamic. Now what's the difference between the two? A short story is dynamic, can be engaged using code. So it could be a readout for a score, or it could be somewhere where the text can conceivably change as instructed by code, basically. So it's basically a live text box that can have its content changed on the fly depending on the code that's put in. Where static text box is fixed, it's always just that. It's static, it's for decorative, demonstrative purposes. Now the third kind here, let me just generate a new box, is known as input. And that's, say, if you have forms and you want people to type into this box. I'll just say type into this box. That would be an input box, and I can see here it's too narrow, so if I wanted to accommodate that, I can always move that. And there we go. Now if I click away and deselect, it also shows you the dotted line. So really, to know which is which, you actually need to highlight it and take a look at your properties. So that's input, that's dynamic, and that's static. Okay, so those are the three kinds of text boxes that you can create. I'll say generally speaking, you're going to create static, but once you get into programming and having forms and so on, it's conceivable that you will use either input or dynamic text boxes. Now let's talk about styling text. I'm going to just go over to this one. And if I want to change fonts and so on, or establish them, you can see under character I have fonts, styles, sizes, distance in between, and under paragraph you have even more control over here under options. Now I am in the current 2020 version, so it might look a little different in other versions, but basically here are all your controls for styling the text. So if I want to address some text that already exists, I would go in, I could double click inside the box, simply highlight it, and here you can see the color. So if I want to change it to red, now when it's highlighted you don't see it until you let go. In this newer version I can change the opacity here, but if you're in an older version you can click on the swatch and there's an alpha control here. I know it's a little bit cut off, but you can just drag or type in the alpha number, which is the opacity level. Okay, so that's how we change color. This is how we change fonts. Let me just pick something else. There we go. And it's highly recommended you actually click embed, because when you're outputting this file, especially when you're using dynamic text boxes, I found if you embed it, the font will be embedded in the file and it will be less likely to have font display issues when it's in runtime. So I'm going to click embed. And usually you can give like a custom name, but I'm just going to say all Tratello, which is the name of the font, and choose the all character range right there. You can just isolate uppercase, lowercase, numerals, but I might as well grab the whole thing. It's not a lot of room on the file. And then simply click OK. Now I should save this. And at this point my font is embedded into the file. And that's this crazy font that I'm using right here. And when I output this, ultimately it will carry that font and there will be no display issues. I found that when you don't embed, you can sometimes get display issues, especially with numbers. Sometimes they simply don't show up. It's a weird thing, but anyway, when you embed, you've gotten that security, if you will, that all your font characters are actually in the file. So I think that's basically the roundhouse trip on working with text. We could go into greater detail on some of those features, but those are the big steps. So there's the 3 types. Then there is the styling of the text, if you will, and then there's the area text versus line text. All right, and you can edit the width of a text box when you highlight it by simply dragging those handles. And once you drag a handle again, it's automatically converted to area text, which means it will retain and lock the width of that text box when you're typing into it. So if I leave a space and I start typing here, you can see how it retains the text box width, and it will push it down if I add more characters. Okay, so once again, those are the basics with using text inside of Adobe Animate. And I just invite you to practice these. This is not an assignment per se, but if you don't know how to do this, of course, your following assignments will need you to come back to this. So give it a try, get a little familiar with the text tool. And that's your text demonstration for today.